friends. My name is Stephanie Romero, and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. Welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. I am very fortunate to have in my life Sheba Gittens. Sheba is the mother and guide to Alun, wife to Sering, and sister to humanity. Sheba is an ancestor returned, living in this iteration of the world. She is an heartivist, arts educator, co-creator of space, orator, facilitator of joy, organizer with community, and a weaver of truth. Sheba received her BA in Africana Studies and has spent her career in the practice of liberation and justice. She is a certified wellness coach, prenatal yoga instructor, and 500-hour Raja yoga instructor. Utilizing a multitude of mediums, Sheba presents workshops, co-creates integrative arts experiences, facilitates affinity group spaces, hosts events, and exists as a member of humanity. We are very blessed to have Sheba as someone who also shares space in Awaken Pittsburgh, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with her. Sheba, I so appreciate you entering this conversation with me. I have been blessed by knowing you for a good number of years now and happy to deepen that through this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to share what I've gathered in this realm as a part of our collective consciousness. I always appreciate an opportunity to touch base, especially in community with folks who we're working to build a future, of our dreams, of our desires. And so, yeah, I do appreciate being here with you, Stephanie. And I do appreciate the invitation to be here because only we can hold the conversation that we need to have together. And that's the part of what I love about Adrienne Maree Brown's work is the emergent strategy, like showing up in the work together and knowing that we have the conversation inside of us.
Yeah, I love her work as well. Cool. Well, I start all of the conversations just by asking folks, maybe you could talk about your journey of practice, mindfulness, meditation, contemplative practice more generally. I'd love to hear about the journey for you.
Ooh, thank you for this question. Recently, I came into an awareness that I've been practicing mindfulness for a long time, even as a child in Brooklyn. I've had recent memories resurface where I would be laying on my bed and I don't know if you know, I don't always know how to describe this, but when, we're in the day and then the light is coming into the house and the light changes, it brightens, it darkens. I remember witnessing that as a child and being so focused to be clear when it was happening and when it wasn't in the cycle that it was happening. I remember looking at the leaves dancing against the wall and just being so focused on it, having my full attention present to seeing that structure, that shaping, and being curious about my own shadows on the wall. And that's since I was a child. I had to have been in the single digits. I can't recall exactly. in the double digits now, times however many. So that's kind of like the back end of that, right? The beginnings. And as an adult, I got into practice when I was in college and needing to take time to mend my tender heart around leaving home, coming from Brooklyn to Pittsburgh, not knowing anyone, and recognizing that this was a task that I had to take on my shoulders by myself. There was some family support, but the crux of it was like, what movement will I bring to this? Because it relies on me. And so there were moments of taking a deep breath. There were moments where I had to find stillness in my life. And there were small practices there. And I would say towards my latter 20s, early 30s, I really began to sit myself down. And I used to practice actually with Felicia at the Kingsley Association when she would offer the classes through the Healthy Black Family. And that was in my early college years. And that kind of started the more technical learning around stilling the mind, being with the self, bearing witness to the moment of right here, right now. And it offered me so much language and a really safe place to practice. Because here was this beautiful Black woman facilitating a space that really didn't look like my body had to be a certain way to be in the room. It looked like what I was willing to bring into the practice itself, which was everything, myself and all. So yeah, that's kind of like the starting point for me. And now it's my medicine. It's what helped me survive the significant trauma I experienced at my son's birth at the hands of the hospital. It is the thing that got me out of the hospital and woke me up every day, was being in a practice of meditation, specifically holding space for the spiraling that was occurring in my inner world, and what had been taken away from me and what I was fighting for all at the same time. And we were in COVID. So it has been a tool to support me in addressing a lot of what's been happening in my life. You know, that integrative arts component of it. I love neurographic doodling. I love being in that practice of allowing myself to just move with my pen, to come back and round out the sharp corners of my memory, and to find places where I may not be seeing the tools that I have, and to bear witness again to how those tools live in my life. So there's a long answer here. I'll stop here, Stephanie. As you can tell, there is so much more.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's imbued in my practices. It's a part of how I live my life.
Yes, yes, but I love your journey, and I always love hearing everyone kind of tell their journey, because people come to practice in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And part of what I heard in your story is one that I feel is so universal, is the drive to heal. You know,
Yeah.
you named mending your heart and realizing that you needed to be in that yourself to take that
Yeah.
responsibility for your own healing. And that is so common when I talk to people, is that realization that they could find practices to support their health, their well-being, their healing. And so that is just so universal. And like, what a beautiful thing that you were able to find that. And for folks listening who don't know, Felicia was is a yoga instructor, Felicia Lane Savage, who was also
Friedman.
Friedman, sorry, yep,
Yeah.
she got remarried. um, yeah, who Sheba and I, that's how we met, because we were both in her yoga teacher training together.
Through Yoga Roots on Location.
That's right.
Um, and the other part that I want to name too is that what sustains me in my practice and what is something that I find to be very important for me to hold sacred is the collective history that we share. There are some inheritances from past ancestors who have mucked it up and created a trajectory of hurt and sorrow and suffering. And there are things that live beyond my control. And I have to shore up myself in order to walk in the world every single day. And this practice is a part of the vitamins that I take, right? The nutrients that I give myself to show up in the world, while I'm also trying to co create a liberatory path for myself, for my family, for my community, for humanity in the ways that I can through collaboration and care and community care. And I fall short. And so I need to engage my tools that will allow me to see the bounty, even through the hardship, even through the shadowy stuff. I need a practice that helps me return to what I'm supposed to be doing. And this offers that for me.
And I would say, Sheba, I feel like we are all human and all have our limitations. And so what you are describing to me does not feel like you falling short. It feels like you need to recharge, you need to refill, replenish as you are giving so much because our personal resources are limited as human beings.
Mhm.
So I just want to frame that for you slightly differently, like the drink as you pour, right? Because
And I hold that framing, Stephanie, because it's important to remember what I've inherited. That's the framing I inherited. So what you've named is another lens in which to see that inheritance. So both things are very true. And I think both things must be true because we have to know what we are contending with in order to
yes.
evolve it forward. So I appreciate the addition to my framework because that's how we do the movement is we may hold one more present than the other, but they all exist at the same time.
Yes, thank you for that thoughtful thoughtful consideration of what I offered you. And I love what you're saying too because the topic that we were going to talk about today is appreciation, right? And when things are very difficult, which currently in our world, things are very difficult. I feel the weight of a lot going on. And before we
Yeah.
hit record, we were both sharing there's a lot going on that brings up fear, that brings up anxiety, that brings up anger, a lot, a lot of things. And so I guess, you naming that you have to have practices that help you see the plenty, for me, that's part of a gratitude or appreciation practice. So I wonder if you could say a little bit more about specifically how you do that.
Yes. So there's one app. So this is like a practice with my kiddo. There's one app that I use almost every night called Balance. And on Balance, there's a song specifically called the Sleep Song. And the gentleman who sings that song, first of all, the bounty of his voice, the softness in his voice, it is a lullaby that both my son and I get to listen to together while he's allowing his energy to find rest. And so one of my practices is to play that song with my son. And if we don't get to the song, to invite the same concept. Little one, let us rest our bodies. Let us allow ourselves to feel the sheet below us. And then we start talking through the layers of that as he starts winding his energy down. So that's one of my familial practices I'll take. Another practice that I really, really appreciate deeply, and this is going to sound, I don't want to make it sound so simple because it is a little complex, but allowing myself to enjoy my coffee. And I say that because there's so many layers to accessibility. There are so many layers to existing as a person in this realm and being able to find enjoyment in the things that we have access to because we know that it's just a knowing that there are so many others in the world. Like I deal with that reality. I feel for the folks who don't have capacity, don't have space. And so when I can get that moment to still myself and enjoy my coffee, I really focus on taste. I'm curious about who picked these coffee beans, who, you know, who created this oat milk, who are the factory workers. I allow myself to just imagine and offer care to those folks. And I know that in my imagination, that doesn't give that person a pay raise. It doesn't give those folks equity. It doesn't give them buy in into their companies to be more cooperative. But for my spiritual self, it gives me an opportunity to just offer a note of gratitude into the universe because I do believe that we get to pour our wisdom into the collective consciousness for us to be tapped into. So even that moment with my coffee is to enjoy the taste, but also to acknowledge that I'm a co-created being in a co-created world, and that I cannot have these moments without others pouring into my here and now. And other practices include journaling and taking a moment to sit and listen. I love closing my eyes and I love tuning into sound, the sound that's furthest away from my body, finding another rhythm of the street, whether it be cars passing up and down. I live on a very active street. So listening to the sound of different weights as they travel up and down the street, a truck versus a car versus a bicycle, actively listening to the footsteps, the laughter outside, and allowing that to be my center focus. Sitting still at my office, just listening. And I have many more practices that I do consistently every day. I'm trying to work to balance myself, as we already talked about, in a dysregulated world. And the moments where I feel like I'm spiraling, I might have to stop. I might have to still myself, by paying attention to how my feet feel on the floor, to how my body feels against the chair that I'm sitting in. So those are some ways that I integrate my practice. So it's a part of my life. If I'm cutting into something to cook, I want to feel the knife going through this item. I want to feel the weight of the knife in my hand. I want to know that this is about to offer something to myself and my family. And big up to the persons plural, who brought the thing into my reality. So those are some of the ways that I engage my practice.
I love it. You said a lot there too that we could unpack potentially, but just starting I, what I take from a lot of that is shifting yourself from mindlessly, for example, consuming food or drink to a real mindful presence in all the things that we do. And that centering interconnection and what Thich Nhat Hanh would call interbeing, right?
Mhm.
Centering the fact that we only have our cup of coffee because of hundreds of people and their
Yes,
labor, right?
yes,
That's how we're able to receive that. And so I really love that. I love mindful eating, mindful drinking. I think if we all could do that even just once a week for 5 minutes, the first couple of bites, like it would really shift a lot of consumption, I feel. So thank you for sharing that practice. And then the other practices you named, like sensory, and this is one of the things that we teach people, as like with trauma, to bring them into the present moment is like a listening practice, or the feel your body in the chair, your feet on the floor. Those kind of fully in the present moment practices are so important in the face of, as you said, being in a dysregulated world and trying to stay regulated.
yes. And sometimes my practices don't come preemptively. They come as a reflective response to something I've gone through. Even for the cooking, I'm trying my hardest to get back to my cooking in a way that culturally roots me and in a way that offers me what I need to be sustained physically, cellularly, and emotionally. There's quite a relationship to all the things that we get to explore based on how society identifies our bodies. And sometimes I find that getting to my practice right when the thing is happening or right before to prepare myself may not be accessible. So a lot of my work is forgiving myself and really bringing forward my practice when I am very clear and aware. And talk about appreciation. I appreciate that the distance between the two has shortened over time because I am actively engaging in this practice, knowing that it feeds me. And that distance will hopefully get shorter and shorter and become a default response. That's one of the goals that I have in this practice, is to continue this. So for the however many years I wasn't actively practicing, it will take that many years for it to be immediately sustainable in my life, the immediate default to how I show up in a moment. And so I have to give myself a lot of grace when I don't have that immediate access. And I appreciate you talking about the timing. Sometimes I have 2 minutes that are clear to me. And those are the 2 minutes I sit and I listen. Those are the 2 minutes I check in with my breath. And then I invite more minutes and I wait, like I have to co-create it to come. So it's a very layered thing because sometimes, we may not get to the practice because of all of the weight that comes with whether or not you're doing it right, you're doing it well, you're doing it enough, right? And I want to say to the folks who are listening that you are doing it. The very act of doing it is the act. That is it. That is the magic. You did it today. You did it right now by listening to these words and taking your time. And we have to celebrate those moments.
That's right. That's right. Whenever we can fit in any kind of practice or self-care, we should celebrate that because it's really, really hard. It goes counter to everything that's happening in our culture that says that we shouldn't be doing it.
Yes. That's the other part. You're literally trying to do something with integrity and with intention that is not aligned with the way that we've received and learned how to be in this world. So it is going to be a little bit of a friction, unless this is something that is innate to what you've always been doing. But for those of us who didn't have the access, didn't have the awareness, didn't know, it will be a bit of a it will be a bit of a bountiful endeavor, and we will be victorious.
Yeah.
We will be.
Yeah. I am thinking about what we were talking about just before we hit record, and facing difficult emotions, difficult situations that are coming up for so many folks more and more recently. Um, One of the things we were talking about is not bypassing those emotions and trying to use a practice or a technique, whatever, to stuff what's going on because that's not helpful. Because it'll still be there. It's not like it goes away. But to really be able to sit with and in the words of Resma Menachem, to metabolize, right? To metabolize the trauma, the fear, the anger. So I'm wondering if you could share any practices that have been helpful for you to hold the difficulty and metabolize it.
So I want to first go back to our earlier conversation when I talked about this idea of spiritual bypassing specifically. And there's so many ways that we do it and don't even know that we're doing it, right? So something could happen and we'll say to a friend, "Oh, everything happens for a reason." And I do this to myself at times, right? And I have to catch myself and say, "We can hold that perspective for sure. And we must also be clear about what elements have led us to this moment here." And I feel like the practice of confrontation, addressing, bearing witness, seeing, being in a safe enough space within myself to say, I want to know what led me to this moment. Because all of those things can be true. Everything happens for a reason. And how did I get here and what is my lesson? And sometimes I have to make space within myself to receive that lesson. And some of those practices are quite abundant and quite simple at the same time. One of my practices, and this may sound however it sounds, I don't know if anyone's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, me too," or like, "What?" But folding laundry. There is something about the mathematics involved in folding a shirt that offers me a sense of peace. That putting my full concentration into fitting all of my t-shirts into a particular shape to fit on my bookshelf offers me a place to be focused on that alone and not the millions of thoughts that are trying to find me that want to be witnessed and addressed. I sometimes use that time to process myself out. Earlier, I talked about neurographic art. I have recently opened up a book and just started doodling in that book. And neurographic art is like the style for me that really resonates. Because in that style, I can do the other styles that I have. And so being in my art practice is a place that offers me kind of that like focus and that awareness. I put my attention into the feeling of the pen against my fingers and the palm of my hand, or in my hand in general. I put my attention to how my wrist is moving in the shaping of the lines on the paper. And other practices are really the ones that we've learned, right? That we've seen historically, allowing myself to sit with an elongated spine, chin parallel to the ground, allowing my shoulders to rest down, and noticing when they try to rise back up, because that's a point for me to check in with my body. How can I make this more supportive and nutritive? And each time I get to tend to myself in the practice of meditation, like really offer myself that care, I'm doing something that I'm going to need for my future self. Right, Sheba? Allow your shoulders to rest. Take an inhale in, bring your shoulders up. Exhale those shoulders down, girlfriend. You got this. Notice where your tongue is. Your tongue is at the top of your mouth. Is there tension there? Yep. Let's release that tension, girl. You got this. So it gives me space to coach myself. And it's taken me a long time to recognize that that internal posturing is not against the act of doing the meditation. It is something that offers me more enhancement. And then I get to sit because I found the comfort within myself. I found what I needed for the moment. And then I get to sit and allow space to be had. And I find in those times, I'm better able to understand how I feel. I'm better able to understand why something is angering me and I can't get over it. And I'm also clear. It gives me space to be clear that things that are systemic and outside of myself, I cannot do anything about that right here, right now, in this current moment of existing right here, right now. But what I can do is give myself space to shore up myself, to strengthen myself, so that I can take action when I am able and capable to do that, so that I don't move with a sense of guilt. And that's something that I want often, that I'm trying to give to myself. And there's more space of growth that I need for that.
Yeah, I love everything that you're saying in that. It actually, what was coming to my mind is basically the way that I think about a regular practice is building up like
Yes.
like our brains, right? And our emotional resilience, because it's like you do physical activity, physical exercise to build up your body, but meditation, the practices you're describing, this is what we do to build up our emotional resilience and our balance, right? Our sense of equilibrium, our sense of centeredness, so that when we are faced with difficulty, we can see it more clearly. We can hold it more tenderly and with wisdom, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. And release ourselves from the things we think need to exist the way that they need to exist. This concept of a perfect meditation, right? I feel like every time I take my mind back to my breath in the practice, that I have achieved something super successful, because I didn't allow myself to spend 24 minutes on a thought that I could unpack at a later time, where I could give this to myself now. And one naming that is important for me is, as you're talking, I'm thinking about building the muscle for this practice. You have to do it with a level of consistency. And the part that I struggled with and still struggle with is, if I do it at night and I do it in the morning, can I do it at opposing times on different days, and will that still count? And what I've realized, the answer is, it absolutely counts. It all counts, right? There's this phrase that says, count it all joy. We must count it as a part of the practice, because that is the consistency. And then you start integrating it into your life moments. You're getting on the bus and you notice something is happening, and you allow yourself to be present with how you're feeling. Noticing, as you say, the sensations are really where I do put a lot of focus. As we're talking, I'm like, yeah, I do put focus in sensations. And that's because, as someone who is navigating this world, neurospicy, as I learned from a dear beloved community member, the sensations are important for me. That's where I can grasp my attention um, with greater ease, so to speak. And I don't want to use the language of ease because it's not easy, but it's the most accessible, I should say, and what I have access to. So I go there first.
Yeah, I love the it all counts because I think even you describing your cup of coffee or cutting the vegetables for making dinner, that all counts too, right?
All
It
count.
all counts. It
Yeah.
absolutely all counts. And the idea of perfect meditation, like that was just making me laugh when you said that. Someone once asked me, Stephanie, what's the best meditation I could do? And I was like, it's the one you like and that you'll actually do.
Yes. That's it. It's the one that you like and the one that you can actually do.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
like what's the best meditation for me is not going to be the best meditation for you.
And the question makes sense though, right? Because we're coming from a Western concept of what the practice is. We're not, the Western world did a number on yoga, Raja Yoga. It did a number on a lot of spiritual practices that are indigenous to how people lived their life and currently live their life, right? This is someone's culture we are practicing, right? So giving blessings and deference to the ancestors of the practices of meditation and yoga, to the ancestors who continue to shape and reshape our wisdom through the words that are left to us, and to the folks who sustain this because it is their culture. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for sharing this wisdom with us. And there are so many ancient medicinal energies that have been extracted from the context of culture and given to us as a, okay, this must be done this particular way only, or it's not going to be successful. And what we know is that that's not true. What we know is this, that's not true. So when we root ourselves into the origins, it gives us a different way of holding sacred this cultural tool to support ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And I really appreciate you naming that because one of the reasons that inspired me to start Awaken Pittsburgh as a nonprofit is because traditionally these practices were not through a yoga studio that you had to subscribe to,
Yes.
right? And that you needed like and I nothing against Lululemon, but it's the one that always comes to mind from that you needed the Lululemon $300 yoga outfit to
Hello.
do, you know? But
Yeah.
but it's real that, things enter our culture because we are all soaking in capitalistic orientation that things then get commodified and
Yes.
it becomes,
Polluted.
yeah, it enters the culture like that just because that's the culture we're in. And what a great
Yes.
reminder, like that's not how it started, right?
Yes.
That's not where
Yes.
it's coming from. That's not how, like my teachers have been many, many of them Tibetan. That's not what Tibetans do, right?
Mhm.
So good reminder to all of us that yeah, just the same way that any spiritual practice, the purpose is to help humans be more fully human and life in balance.
Yes. And I will say too, we always get a moment to give thanks. I am grateful that I'm grateful that I get to keep discovering and rediscovering the many layers of me through many ancient systems. I am so grateful to learn meditation, to learn Raja Yoga because of the eight limb pathway that moves beyond the asanas. I am grateful for mindfulness. I'm grateful for all of these practices. And one more that I'll name that is not a part of our dialogue here, but it's important for me and how I live. I'm grateful for the Ifa traditions that I'm learning. The practices, the wisdom, the medicine, the history, the plants, the connection to our ecosystem. All of it together is ancient medicine to be in relationship with ourselves and one another and to manifest what we've come to this realm to do. I know that I'm here with purpose. It has taken years for me to really be sure that there is purpose for me on this realm. And when I say be sure, meaning like be in activation, right? This is what I need to do. This is what I'm meant to do. And having these practices has gotten me closer, being able to practice, the wisdom to practice, the wisdom to want to learn and to be aware has offered me space to get closer and closer to the me that I know I am designed to be. And it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of grace. It is a lot of grace. It's a lot of grace because I have to remember what I inherited and why some of my behavior is still going to be rooted in that past, and that I get to do the work to untangle it, and that my meditation, my mindfulness, my pathways towards the evolution of self, all of that I get to do it even through the hardship. And I must stay present on the pathway not to block myself from seeing truth. And it's that truth that I lean into to continue this journey. The good, the bad, however we want to name it. I believe it all has a place.
Yes. And I love where you shifted there to your purpose, because a lot of times, even in people's career path, right? Understanding their why, understanding their purpose, I feel helps people combat things like burnout, things like compassion fatigue, right? Because if you're not really in touch with your authentic self and your why and your purpose, then it's really easy to let other people put a purpose on you.
Absolutely. And I'll also add that resources help us get closer to that. I feel I'm still gathering opportunities to share and to be in practice with folks in community. This is the work that I love to do. I get to work with Awaken Pittsburgh, with Ujima Collective, with Yoga Roots on Location, with Balaphone West African Dance Ensemble, with Yoga Roots. I said Yoga Roots, but I mean Yoga Motive. I get to be in a place where people are wanting to practice this way of existing. That is a resource because it gives me community. It gives me community to really be with folks who are saying, yeah, this is what we're going to do. We're going to speak truth. It's going to be hard. It's going to be messy, but we get to do it together. We get to take a breath together. We get to sing in jubilation together. We get to cry together. We get to call forward the ancestors together. We get to do the work of being and existing and the magnitude of all that we are as human beings, which means we're celestial beings, which means that we are of the earth and of the galaxy and of the universe. And we get to honor those complicated layers of our existence. And so for me, that resource is everything. That human relationship, that community of practice is life-saving.
Yes, 100%. I I often feel like people understand meditation as a solitary thing, but
Yes.
actually it's a communal practice,
Yes.
right? It is a solitary thing, like you're in your own mind, but it is also a community practice. And when you can
Yes.
practice in community, there is a strength, there is a support, like a collective energy that lifts you up and supports your practice and helps you grow it. That doesn't happen if you practice on your own. And so I love that you named community, because I think in our practices, we need community, but also to have the strength to live our purpose, to have the strength to confront a lot of stuff that we see going on that we know is not just and right. We need community. We cannot do
Yes.
it by ourselves.
Yes, we must heal through community, heal in
Yep.
community. There are things that have happened to our individual bodies that are a larger part of how community holds space, how we can hold space, even the potential of holding space. And again, I know I've talked about this inheritance, but we are contending with a history in our everyday existing. And that part of community is so powerful. I think of a choir. I think of a choir. And I think of the choir having multiple sections. and in particular, a gospel choir. And when folks begin to sing together and the sections come together, there is a stirring that happens in the room. There is a shifting of energy that comes when it is so soulful, when the words that are being offered are so sweet. Even if I don't use the language of my Lord and Savior, if that's not my language, but I can feel the love of the folks who are communicating this energy of their Lord and Savior, I still feel the wisdom of what is coming forward through that choir. I still feel the energy that is coming through that choir, the belief, the love, the care, the tending to. You can feel that in the room. And I think I think of that when I think of meditation, a meditation practice. How are we shifting the vibration of the room all together as beings? And I've been in spaces where we know that it can be activating for some of us. So we always give the option to opt out. And I love that. Always come back to your anchor. Always bring yourself back to a space that feels safe. Trust your intuitive wisdom. I love leading with that. That's something that is critical. And when we come out of the practice of meditation or a mindfulness practice together, you can see the reshaping of the room. And that is something that I see as a very beautiful gift to witness it. Every time I get to witness it, it is such a gift that community members have given to me, because it's such an honor to be trusted to offer this practice with folks in community, because there's a lot that we have to bring with ourselves in order to do it safely, in order to trust folks to trust themselves, and giving permission. It's so layered, but what a gift. What a bountiful gift to share. So earlier you had asked a question even around transmuting energy. And one practice that I've been using as we're talking about this is, how do I take things into my heart and know the strength of my heart, right? We often think of the heartbeat in one particular, like open and close, open and close, but the heart is actually rotating in some regards, right? So how can I think of this pumping in and out of blood, this traveling of oxygen, and this movement in a rotation circular to life? How can I think about that and think about that being used to transform energies that are living inside of me? It doesn't mean that the story won't get me activated. It means that I get to do the work to transmute the feeling and get better clarity on how I for real feel. Not just in the moment, because that's sometimes different. In the moment, I could be like, what the heck is going on here? I could be throwing out all types of things. But when I've had time to reflect and bring it into my heart space, I feel like it gives me a better opportunity to understand what's really at play with myself and others. And it's work that I get to continue doing. That's a place that I want to continue emerging in my practice, is that heart transformation work.
Well, I feel like that is a beautiful spot to maybe start to wrap up on, because that journey, what you're just describing, is hopefully the path that all of us find ourselves on, and that will never end, right?
Never end. Yes.
It will never end. And that's the beauty of it, is we don't have to be perfect, because we can keep working on it.
Yes.
We have many opportunities.
Yeah, that's true, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And since we're wrapping up, I just want to thank the folks who are listening. Thank you for taking this time to hear what is living for Stephanie and I, Sheba. Thank you for being present in this moment, and whatever feelings are coming up for you, whatever energies are coming up for you, may you have space to process. May you have a moment to really tune inward to gather the wisdom that is showing up in this conversation, if there is any for you. And just so much gratitude to be here and to be in this conversation, because like you said, it's a never ending conversation. It is
Yes.
an eternal conversation.
That's it. That's
With
it.
many evolutionary parts.
That's it. Well, as we wrap up, I have two final questions. One is there anything else that you had in your mind or heart that you wanted to share that we didn't get to before we close it down?
Thank you for the additional ask. I feel like there's so much in my heart that I want to share. So for
Yeah.
now, I'll hold that space
Okay.
and know that the universe will provide another opportunity to be in deeper conversation.
Perfect. And you named a couple of fantastic resources. One was Adrienne Marie Brown, and the
Mhm.
other was the app Balance. So
Yeah.
thank you for naming those. Is there any other resource that you would like to share with listeners that maybe something that has supported your practice or your journey in some way?
Yes. I would say with balance, I just want to name that it's free for 1 year, which
Okay.
is what really drew my attention to it and why I even explored it. So that was a major like gift.
Yeah.
And Resma Menachem, you mentioned him earlier.
Yes.
I have been in such deep gratitude for my grandmother's hands.
Yes.
Okay. And Adrienne Marie Brown's work, she still has a blog online that I would recommend folks like tuning into. And the book that was really a solid foundation for me was Emergent Strategy.
Yeah.
There is one more book that has been helpful. It's not one that is immediately connected to like a mindfulness practice or meditation, but it is something that has shifted a lot for me. And it's called The Four Agreements.
Yes.
That book, again, was a part of my journey to turn inward. How can I be impeccable with my speech, which is one of the agreements, if I don't practice? And how do I get there if I'm not focusing in on what I'm actually saying and what
Hmm.
the roots of this saying are? So those are some of the areas. And of course, my practice with the places that I work with Yoga Roots on Location, the yoga teacher training is a space that has offered great bounty and care in oration. Working with Awaken Pittsburgh and our communities, that has offered great care, and Awaken also offers free sessions. And
Hmm.
that's something that can also be a barrier for us to do the thing is money and resource.
Yes.
So
Yes.
looking at just the ways that folks can tune into what Awaken offers, and also consider other community organizations that are doing this work. And there are so many amazing folks who are doing this work, who
Yeah.
are offering it accessibly in the city of Pittsburgh. And
Yeah.
folks can Instagram me. I think my information is going to be available.
Yes.
I can share some of those resources.
Yeah, and even beyond Pittsburgh, like online,
Oh,
there's
yes,
so
yes,
much, right? So as long as
yes.
folks can get on a phone, there's so much now. We live in a time when there's so much accessible, if we can, go to a library and get on a computer even.
Hello. And just shout out to the Libby app that you can use from your local library. Some great books.
Yes.
You can get
Yes.
access to them, audio versions, everything.
Yeah.
And I think there was one more from our library. It's Libby and is it Hoopla?
Yeah,
I,
Hoopla is the other one. Yep, you're right.
those that are a really great resource.
Yeah,
So yeah,
totally.
thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, humanity, for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Sheba. I appreciate you and the way you show up in the world and hold space for others and their healing, and the way you hold space for yourself and your own healing, which is
Mm,
fantastic modeling for all of us. So I appreciate it.
thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for that naming.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm doing the work to see myself more clearly. And so this is why the practice is so important for me, is because I want to see it. I don't want to spend time wondering and guessing if it's true. I need to stand in the truth of me. So thank you for that naming.
Say Something Studios.